Hello there, and welcome back to episode 2 of my School of Legends. Today we're going to be looking at Lulu comps, how to play them, and some other stuff as well, mostly based around towers and why they're so important, and how to win those games that kind of drag out and get messy where they really shouldn't. So for some background context, we're looking at the Summercast tournament, which is over in Latin America South. This is the final, which will explain as you see throughout the game, as you do there, the announcement popping up in Spanish. This is one of the two teams that I coach, and they are, I think they're all challenger players. They're pretty good. But yeah, so this is a game that we end up winning, but we should have won it a lot quicker, and it could have been a lot cleaner. So hopefully today you'll learn how to close out games a bit better. So looking at the team comps, firstly, we can see on the right hand, which is us, the red side, we've got a Lulu comp, and the left side, they've got a bit of a weird comp. You wouldn't really see something like this very often in professional, because mostly the Shyvana. We happen to know that their jungler was pretty much an Udyr Shyvana one trick, so we just banned him out on Udyr, and yeah, he ended up defaulting to Shyvana, which we predicted. Let me just pause this while I carry on nattering away at you about compositions. We also knew the top laner was pretty much a Malphite one trick, which is a bizarre thing to see. So we picked away the Malphite pretty early, and the same for the Lucian. So these are all contested picks. So with this in mind, their top lane was also a substitute. So in this game, like, this isn't something that you'll be able to use in your kind of dynamic queue games. But if you're going into tournaments and stuff, put a lot of emphasis onto finding the weakest player and just tilting the hell out of them. Basically, it sounds kind of harsh, but it works really well. Just find one player that you can abuse and just don't let them play any League of Legends that day. It's a really horrible strategy to go up against, and it tilts people off the face of the earth, and it wins games really easily. So back to the kind of composition as a whole, that's a kind of a bit of a smaller element. On the larger scale, their composition is so LeBlanc and Lissandra are going to be mostly looking for picks, and they have pretty high mid-game spikes. Ezreal's their kind of late-game safety component, because he'll come out of a fairly passive lane and just scale up and come out at usually about 30 to 35 minutes with his kind of 3 core items and be really strong. Shyvana will most likely build Devourer, as I think she does. No, I'm sure she does. So again, you're looking at a fairly passive jungle and a fairly passive bottom lane, with a fairly high mid-game spike, mostly looking around picks. They're also really magic damage centric, so that's something to be aware of going into this. Our team, the Lulu comp, this is a kind of classic Lulu comp. Our main hard engage element is in the top lane with the Malphite, and then we have essentially what you saw last game, if you watch the last episode with Fnatic, where you just want to bunch up into like a 5-man death ball at the end of the game, and win the game. And the longer this game goes, the greater our chances of winning are, because they're quite one-sided in terms of their ability to put out damage. They're mostly going to be magic damage, which gives us a really easy time itemizing against them. And also because of the Lissandra and the Blank being their kind of main sources of burst, just because of the fact that Hex Drinker and Mercurial Scimitar exist as items makes this a lot easier. We get to the late game, and our AD carry, who's the Lucian, who's most likely going to be kind of the main late game carry threat in any Lulu comp. If he gets the Lulu ulti on him and has a Merc Scimitar, then he's not going down, really. Not to the Lissandra ulti anyway. So let's get into this. So yeah, our kind of objective for this game is pretty much just to scale up into the late game and roll over them and win. And you'll note they also have really, really low wave clear, and that the wave clear is all magic damage, so that's really important to note. Starting off into the game, Lulu's bullying pretty hard, which is good. Shyvana's going to have a slightly quicker jungle clear than the Graves, so that's something you need to keep in mind. The bot lane should play out fairly passively. It should be a pretty farm heavy lane. It's not going to be particularly easy to gank, as Alistar isn't, So this is pretty big. We get a flash advantage in the mid lane. That's great. Shyvana comes into gank, but it's Lulu. Just walk away. So this is where our first kind of play starts happening, and this is because the blank's forced out. And this is a nice reaction from our mid laner and our jungler. What they do is, as you can see on the map now, they're rotating into the enemy jungle, and they're going to try and pick up the blue buff. Now, this is kind of a risky play, and that's for two reasons, or maybe not. Yeah, it's a bit risky, and there might have been a better play here. So the top lane's pushed in, right? So Lissandra has made like roam priority on these two. Lissandra can get down here quicker. We force Shyvana out. We burn a flash for her, which is a bit silly. It's not really worth. You might as well keep hold of your flash. And as you can see, Lissandra's going to get down here first. LeBlanc's already come back. So this is looking pretty risky right now. It doesn't turn out too bad. We end up with an okay trade, but I mean, generally speaking, in the early game with a Malphite, especially your kill pressure isn't particularly high. So I wouldn't recommend taking fights really early, especially as we've just talked about. You know, all we need to do is scale up into this game. So I think the safer option there, when LeBlanc had been forced back, would have just been push the mid lane in with the Graves, because Graves is super quick at pushing lanes in, and go back. And that would have been probably more optimal. So Graves gets a kill, LeBlanc gets a kill, Lulu has an assist, that's fine. The wave's bouncing back into us at mid lane, so we can play fairly safely around that. Graves decides not to go back, which I might question. I would say that you probably want to go back and spend your gold, unless he was waiting for a breakpoint, which I don't think he was. And that way you can improve your jungle clear efficiency and go for a fuller clear. He ends up coming down to gank LeBlanc, which is a good call, mostly because she doesn't have a flash anymore. And again here, this is a really important point, I think, in general in this meta, is so right here, we don't have any vision in the bot side, right? We have vision in the top side, so we actually know that Shyvana's not there. So we know that she's going to be in her bot side jungle, but we don't have any vision there. Especially seeing as we just fought there and we just cleared out the blue buff, so the logical place for her to go now is to her bottom side. Seeing as we don't have a ward there, chasing into a bush here is kind of risky. Not only that, but just a more general point about the kind of macro meta at the moment is that minions are just worth so much more. Minions went up from, I think, 16 gold per minion on average to about 20. So there you might as well just chase her off, take the free CS, and that's fine. Just zone her. We don't need to take any risks, because again, all we're doing is looking to scale up for the late game. Graves goes down to bot side. I would have said not to bother ganking bot side in this game that much. It doesn't go badly or anything, but it's not that big of a part of our win condition. And Alistar Israel is just such a super safe lane, and with Trundle Lucian, we don't particularly have much hard engage there. We don't have much kill pressure, as it were. Okay. What's going on now? So Lulu's playing pretty up, which is fine, because Lulu's a lane bully. You got an early advantage on the LeBlanc. Well, she got a kill, but you're 2 Doran's rings to her 1 Doran's ring right now, so that's fine. You've got a stat advantage. Again, we see a little bit of a misplay here in the mid lane, I think, coming up. Graves has just gone back for the first time. So yeah, this is where it starts happening. After you've pushed this wave into the tower, unless you're going to push this next wave into the tower as well, right here, then you should just go back, right? Because LeBlanc's going to come back and she's going to have an item advantage. She's going to have, well, she's spent her 800 gold now into a Phoenix Codex, so she's got 1,200 gold in her inventory, and you've only got 800 essentially. And she's got a potion as well. Taking this last CS is kind of greedy. That didn't need to happen. But yeah, with like on a Lulu, just be happy with in a Lulu comp at this kind of level. Just be happy with, especially when the LeBlanc has a kill as well and a gold advantage. Just be happy with the minion advantage. You're getting a CS advantage, that's fine. Back to the point I was making about minions being worth more earlier. You used to kind of, with the old minion gold values used to say, okay, so a minion is probably worth, well, a kill is probably worth about 20 minions. That's a lot lower now. It's about 12 with the current gold costs. So, next point. Lissandra dies here. Good gank from Graves. Nice vision in the top lane. So that's fine. And then we just kind of back off. We know that they're on the dragon. We've pinged onto it. I think Graves should have stayed to the top lane, and this is a big part of why Graves is picked so much in the competitive meta, and it's because Graves has such ridiculously high amounts of wave clear and really good pushing speed. As well as the fact that he has good damage and that AD carry is super strong at the moment. But that's the reason why he's been so contested. I think if we'd pushed onto that top tower a bit more and got some more damage down on it, then maybe we could have forced a teleport from Lissandra, or at the very least would have got some good damage down on the tower and taken out another minion wave. And all that means is that it's going to happen anyway. The wave, as you can see in the top lane, is kind of, I think it's reached the tower, and it's going to bounce back to Malphite, so that's fine. But yeah, I think as a general rule in this game, we definitely should have prioritized ganking top more, and you'll see why later with the kind of whole turrets point I'm going to make. And this game serves as a really big kind of reminder as why kills don't actually matter in like high level play, because unless you can get advantage off those kills, it doesn't really matter at all what happens. So this is a roam we should have been a bit more wary about. As I was saying before, the top lane bounced back to Malphite, right? And he used his TP. So that for Lissandra, oh sorry, he didn't use TP there. My bad. So the top wave bounced back to Malphite because we pushed it into their tower. So that gives Lissandra the chance to roam. So that should have been called. So if you're sat at your tower, then you can't see your enemy laner, it means they're probably roaming. So yeah, good roam from her. I think there was something else I was going to mention. I can't remember what it was. Anyway, carrying on. So the bot lane is just going to be a pretty passive farm up lane. Neither lane really has that much kill pressure because of Ezreal's kind of slow scaling build. He's going to get a tier which gives you like no combat stats whatsoever, so he shouldn't be able to kill our bot lane. And our bot lane really, with Trundlelution, is probably not going to be able to kill an Alistar and Ezreal just because of the sustain that they have and the kind of safety that Ezreal has in farming. Let me just double check, where did Graves go after that? Okay, yeah, that's fine. So we come down for a bot lane gank with the Graves. Again, not successful. Ganking level 6 Alistars, probably not going to work out that well. I would have suggested prioritizing more onto the top lane, especially seeing as Lissandra had burnt her teleport and burnt her flash, which means that if you kill that lane, you get a much bigger advantage out of it. And it's a higher percentage gank. Malphite also has his flash on her at the moment, so that's cool. And now this is another kind of jungle pathing mistake from Graves. If you're gonna do Graves has a really, really high farm speed. So right here, seeing as the top laner, I was thinking about going back. He didn't actually go back in the end, my bad. Essentially, Graves should have gone for Gromp, then Wolves, and then maybe gone back and then gone to the other camps. I think that makes much more sense. Top lane isn't massively gankable right now because Malphite's sat at his tower. So Lissandra's just going to go B. So yeah. Gromp Wolves, then go back and then clear your top side probably would have been a more efficient clear there. But yeah, we're playing a little bit sloppy here. Mid lane's playing a bit too aggressive, I would say. Lulu is a lane bully, but you don't this isn't a composition where you need to be that bully. You have a wave clear advantage on the blank, so my suggestion would just be to permanently push up the wave and then try and find roams elsewhere instead of just trying to fight her because she has pretty high kill pressure on you. And again, just go for that top lane constantly and push that guy out of the game. Which is So maybe the... Oh no, Malphite ulti wasn't up there. So yeah, that's fine. Carrying on. So that was a fairly big waste of time on their part, but I think we get a counter gank on the top lane of it. Nice pathing from Trundle, really nice pathing. Good ulti there to interrupt the Lissandra claw. She ults, but it's not going to get her anything. And right here again, this is quite a big mistake that we make here. We should have pushed that tower in, because she doesn't have her teleport up, right? So we do go for the Rift Herald, and we get it. The Rift Herald's a fairly minor objective. Generally speaking, in terms of your priority on objectives, it goes Baron, Towers, Dragon, then Rift Herald, because Rift Herald's just bad. It's not worth particularly much. So right there, with Graves' ridiculous turret damage, because if you stand next to a turret on Graves and just auto-attack it, you hit all 3 shots from your shotgun, we would have taken that turret down, I think. Not only that, but we actually failed to get the wave to crash into her tower, which means that she doesn't lose much CS. And she doesn't have teleport down, so she can't answer it. If we'd got that tower down, and we push the wave all the way down to her second tower, we can then back out and get the Rift Herald. Because, again, as we're talking about minion waves last episode, if your minion waves are down at her turret, she can't move. She's going to have to sit there and farm those minions. And if she does come and interrupt you at Herald, then she loses all those CS. Just get this pause off. I can't remember what that was for. But yeah, so we should have taken a top tower there, really. Or at least got a good amount of damage onto it. And this is so key, getting towers. And the reason for that towers have become way more prioritized this season is because of the changes they made. Well, partly because of the changes they made with the way that waves push. And last episode we talked a lot about how advantageous it is to have your waves pushing into the enemy towers, right? And that's because of loads of reasons. The vision it gives you, the pressure it gives you, the just chip damage on towers it gives you, and the ability to predict where laners are going, right? So, yeah, the more towers you take in a lane, the harder your minions push in that lane. So, and that works on a per lane basis. So, if you have a 1 tower advantage, i.e., your outer tower is up and their outer tower is down, then your minions push a little bit harder. If you have a 2 tower advantage in a lane, your minions push quite a bit harder. If you have a 3 tower advantage in a lane, your minions push so much harder. So this is something that we really want to be abusing, especially with this Lissandra, because what I said to the Malphite before the game is build a banner of command, because look at their because they have LeBlanc and Lissandra, and they're not going to be able to clear any minions. I would have prioritized the banner of command a bit earlier. I'm not 100% sure about the Spirit Visage Rush. I mean, I understand that it gives you the cooldown reduction. This is just them overcommitting to a dive. But Banner of Command does that as well. So maybe I would have gone for the Spectre's Cowl and then straight into the Banner of Command. You could even go as Easy Rot Portal. So Malphite's teleport gets interrupted here, but he's going to get a kill for it. We're pretty lucky this game that the Lissandra is not better. Because a better player would have flashed that Malphite ultimate every single time. And we wouldn't have been able to punish for it. So again, we're just kind of scrapping here, and it's a bit sloppy. Again, we should be able to get some pretty decent damage down onto the top tower here, or onto the mid tower right here. We end up rotating off to Dragon. We should get mid tower for this. Lissandra's dead. Ezreal's dead, LeBlanc's chunked, so all we should be doing is putting 1 ward to protect our flanks, like in the Raptor camp, and then pushing onto the mid tower. And even if we don't get the mid tower, maybe we get a teleport out of Lissandra for it. So yeah, we should be pushing much harder for towers here, rather than the Dragon and the Rift Herald, because if you can get towers down, that gives you the ability to rotate into the enemy jungle really, really easily. And put vision in there, and it just opens up the map and allows you to rotate through lanes much easier. And if you have that rotation priority and that vision priority, then becomes a lot easier to get other objectives like Dragon and Rift Herald in turn. The Rift Herald buff isn't particularly good either anyway. It's only really good in a few kind of select lane swap situations. So our Graves is getting pretty big here. LeBlanc's also quite fed. So again, our mid lane just wants to clear as much as possible and push, like, make sure that the waves are pushing against LeBlanc, so that she has less time to roam and less pressure on the map. She should be punishing a lot more for this. I was very surprised that she didn't kill our bot lane a lot more, well, or at all really. So Lissandra has TP advantage, so she roams. Good play by her. Shame for them that it didn't work out. Good for us. I can't remember what happens next. Well, we'll see. Okay, so she gets shut down pretty hard, and again, this should be a really easy opportunity to push the mid lane right here. Lissandra's in the top lane. She's going to be kept there by Malphite. Graves, every time you play Graves, every time you get the slightest opportunity, you should be trying to get damage down onto the mid tower. Because his auto attacks just deal so much damage to them. You can push one so quickly. So Graves backing off into the jungle right here, I think was probably the wrong call. You still had, I mean, LeBlanc is just spawning now, or in, what does that say? Yeah, right now. So you have at least kind of maybe 20 more seconds of tower damage, which is a lot. You want to be chipping towers as often as possible. Instead, we use it to just kind of sit and farm some more, and this is what I mean about kills not really meaning that much. I mean, we have a slight gold advantage, but we could have had 2 towers down by this point, and that's 800 gold a tower, which is 1,600 gold, which is an extra BF sword for the team, technically. We want to be... The best way to accelerate games like this is to be taking towers, or just the best thing, full stop, at the moment in League is to be taking towers. It's so important. I like this gank in the top lane that we're seeing from Graves. This is really good, because Lissandra's flash is down. This should be a free tower as well, so that's fine. And again, we back off and I think we take the Herald. Yeah, we do. This should be a free tower. And again, if we don't get a tower, we force a teleport out of Lissandra, and then we push our waves into the tower, and then we go and get a Rift Herald. We need much more priority on towers rather than kind of side objectives, because the Rift Herald isn't that big of a deal. So Lulu's doing a really good job of kind of pulling loads and loads of aggro from all the other lanes, which is fine. The LeBlanc is actually kind of building badly. She goes for Morellonomicon into Lucidity, which is not great. If you're that far ahead on LeBlanc, you probably shouldn't be building Lucidity. You should be rushing, well, you shouldn't be rushing, 30% CDR. You don't really need it. You should just be rushing straight damage. Well, in this case, penetration. She should have gone Sork's Boots, if you ask me. And then straight into something like a Ludens or a Void Staff if she noticed we had lots of magic res, which we do. So yeah, Sork Shoes, Void Staff probably would have been a good pick, especially seeing as with a Graves, a Malphite and a Lulu in the team, you can guarantee there's going to be loads of magic resist and loads of health to chunk through. So that's a building mistake on her part. And all this time Graves is getting big on kills, right? So that's great, but we should be definitely abusing this to take down far more towers. Because once Lissandra's tower is down, and we have her like just sat in her at her tower pushing out waves, we can then use... Well, Lissandra's the main source of hard engage for their team, right? Without her, they really don't have much way to get in. They have the Alistar, and the Shyvana, so they have kind of dive onto threat, but we can peel off of that pretty easily with a Lulu and a Lucian and a Trundle. So without the Lissandra there to kind of pin people down, they have a huge disadvantage in team fights, especially seeing as we're a team fighting comp anyway, really, whereas they're more of a pick comp. So what we want to be doing is forcing the Lissandra to stay in her lane, or at least lose some kind of CS for teleporting away from it, and then forcing 5v5 fights, instead of all these little skirmishes where LeBlanc's going to win out, because that's what she's good at. She's good at skirmishing and picking. Yeah, I think if we'd had a Banner of Command or a Zizirot portal much earlier at this point, it probably would have been better. We could have just perma-pressured the top tower, which would have been advantageous for us. So we're spending a lot of time ganking the bot lane, and it's not particularly working out, and I don't think it was the lane that we needed to prioritize. I honestly think we should have just tilted the hell out of the Lissandra. Nonetheless, we did get a good fight out of it. Our top wave wasn't pushing out though, so that's not ideal. And right here again is another situation where we need to be prioritizing towers much more. We get a good dive here, they mess up, they stand on top of each other next to a Malphite. They burn the Lissandra ulti on a Malphite, which is questionable. So now they've got no Lissandra ulti, which is their main engage. LeBlanc's chunked out. Shyvana's up, Ezreal's dead. So again, this should be a free tower. Especially as you see Lissandra recalling, you know she's got no TP. This is free. Okay, we do take this in the end. Good. Thank God. We then rotate round to Dragon. But we're still only 1-0 in towers, which isn't ideal. We should... And the goal's pretty close. You know, kills are so easy to sway because team fighting is pretty scrappy at this kind of level. It's pretty sloppy, and it will be in most levels up until a really, really high point. Even in, you know, some LCS teams, their team fighting is sloppy as hell. So the blue team makes a good move here. They push up the mid lane in response to us taking the dragon. That's something you always want to try and do if you really have no option to try and take a dragon, or to try and contest an objective. Look for a counter somewhere else, which is something they're doing a good job of. Pushing up mid lane is always a good one, and they're pushing on top tower as well. So that's a good answer from them at least. And I'm not sure it's particularly worth it to take a dragon because dragon's kind of meh at the moment in the meta. Okay, so right now Lissandra has no TP and no flash, so this is really when we want to be abusing the hell out of this lane. And if we'd got her top tower down earlier, we could be doing this at her inner tower. We could be getting an inner tower right now. And again, if we had her top tower down, we'd have much more control over their topside jungle, because you can just push her into her tower, and then you can just sit in her jungle and wait for picks, or take away their blue buff, smite the wolf spirit, all this really, really good stuff which will just take away control from them and make it much harder for them to rotate through the map and pick us. I mean, you can see that it's getting harder and harder for LeBlanc to make picks, and that's partly because of her build not being amazing for snowballing, and just because of the fact that this happens. Now, something that I would have said about our Graves' build is that he should have been building a Hex Drinker for sure, maybe even before the Yumu's. I mean, Yumu's first is okay, but after that, I would have expected him to be going more of Malmortius straight into a Sterak's Gauge, and that would just completely nullify any burst from LeBlanc. And I would have expected Lucian to be building a Merc Scimitar, and maybe even Graves to be going Merc Scimitar afterwards. Now here, we don't really have any reason to be sat in the mid lane fighting, right? We just lost our AD carry. No, wait. Not this, even before that. So even when we lose Graves, right, there's no reason to stay around after that. We don't have a mid lane tower, so we're not defending anything. They're not pushing up our waves, apart from, well, in the bot lane's pushing out towards them. Our top tower's going down anyway, because it's low, and because it's 2v1 up there. So staying in the mid lane there was not advisable. I don't know, I'm not too sure about the Dead Man's Plate second on the Malphite either. I would have literally just built for the kind of beating on Lissandra build, the split pushing build, gone straight for a banner and a Zero portal and laughed in her face as she desperately tried to clear out all of the minion waves, which she wouldn't have been able to do. You would have just ended up getting permanent pressure on that lane and then the ability to roam elsewhere on the map. The Abyssal Scepter on the Lulu is a bit questionable. I'm not 100% sure on it. We did need an Abyssal Scepter on the team because, well, we didn't need it, but it was nice because they've got like a lot of magic damage components. And I'd say on a lot of people, I would say that the build is too defensive on like most kind of AP carries, but on a Lulu, it's kind of okay because magic res and health scale multiplicatively. So just having magic res on its own is bad, right? Which is why normally I would say that build isn't great. But shields can give you that health, right? So that they have to chunk through more of your magic resistance because you have more HP. So I'd say that's fine on Lulu. Most Lulus will go straight for a death cap after that because our AP scaling is so good though, and because a lot of your spells aren't benefiting from spell pen. But we didn't really have anywhere else we were going to build an Abyssal. You could have built it on Malphite, but I wouldn't really say that was that great this game. Against another time where we don't get punished at all. Well, Lissandra isn't particularly great, which is just another reason to suspect that we should have been punishing this a lot more. I mean, she's overextended without much ward coverage, and she had Flash and Zonya's up, and her ult. So that Malphite ulti should never have landed. Against a better player, that wouldn't have landed, definitely. I think we end up taking... No, we don't, actually. So this is another kind of faux pas on our part. We see Shyvana bot, so she's going to take our tower. Like, we're already too late to stop that happening. So we should be trading for top tower here. We end up calling for Baron, but it's too forced. It's pretty risky. Don't know what the hell happened there. Trade the tower and then force an engage somewhere else. We have Malphite's TP, so we can force a 5v4, right? So either take the top tower and then immediately engage on the mid lane, or just take the top tower and accept the trade and go and clear that wave in the bottom lane. The video cuts out there. I don't know why, but basically we end up pulling off the Baron and we don't get anything for it. So we actually lose in terms of tower trading there. We kill someone in the top lane, but we lose. We lose out on gold, which shouldn't happen. We should have taken that top tower. This tower should have gone down like 15 minutes ago. Graves is rushing a rapid fire cannon, which I don't particularly agree with. I don't think it's that necessary on him. I mean, it's okay. You get bonus range, you get damage to towers, which is cool. But I mean, we're not really using it to damage towers anyway. And not only that, but a big part of the reason why you pick Graves is just because of his ridiculous burst, which comes from his Q and his R. And rapid fire cannon doesn't really add to that. Against this team, I would have said, and in most situations, I'd say it's much better to just build kind of brawler afterwards, so that you have some kind of artificial front line. More of Malmortius, as we talked about, because you have a Lulu on your team, more of Malmortius, like magic resistance, becomes so much more effective, because magic resistance and health scale multiplicatively. I can never pronounce that word. So just having magic resist is okay. Just having health is okay. If you have a combination of the two, then that's the most efficient way to block damage. We force Lissandra out here. We poke her out a little bit. Their top tower finally goes down to a minion wave. And you see the gold lead is... there isn't a gold lead. It's completely even, which, given that we have a fed grave, shouldn't really be the case. We end up team fighting, and it's pretty sloppy. It's to our advantage because we're a Lulu comp and we can 5-man, but this is... Generally speaking, you don't want to be... Like, we don't need to be taking team fights that are kind of 50-50, as it were. There's a chance that we misplay the team fight mechanically and lose. We have a better team fighting comp, so team fighting is definitely in our favour, but still. We rotate up to the Baron up here, which is okay. I'd say it's, again, a little bit risky because they have LeBlanc, Ezreal, and Alistar up. Maybe I would have just taken the top tower and then gone back, and because you see our side waves are pushing, we'd still have had pressure on the Baron, so we could have made a Baron play there, and we could have at least taken Lissandra's TP out. I think if Ezreal here had sucked a little bit less, then like if he'd actually just been in there doing damage instead of just kind of running around the outsides, then we'd have had a lot harder time, and we end up losing a lot off of the back of this. We end up, like, a lot of us end up dying, and that loses us a lot of pressure on the map. We still have a Baron buff, and it ends up being fine because we're a Lulu comp. They have like no wave clear, apart from Lissandra, but she's not that great. She's pretty behind. I love this Duke over the wall. I think that's brilliant. Unfortunately, it doesn't work out, but oh well. I mean, we get Shyvana's flash for it, so that's kind of cool. Yeah, so we have a Baron buff on our Malphite. Well, yeah, on 3 members. We have a teleport advantage, and we have waves pushing in the side lane. So right here, I would expect to see Malphite going down to the bottom lane. We want to be running a 4-1 split here, and then as soon as Lissandra shows up in a side lane, we force an engage with the 4 people, right? Because we have TP advantage, so she can't do anything. And actually, Malphite has a Banshee's Veil, so she's going to have a hard time even interrupting him. Yeah, our siege is just way better at this point. So after we get a Baron buff with this kind of composition, it should just be kind of straight through the middle. It should be fairly simple. So what do we want to be doing right here? Right here, we want to be just grouping up. So Lissandra's top, and she doesn't have TP. So we actually don't really have to worry about that wave. We can just force straight down the middle. Right here, Lucian splits off and runs top, which is kind of risky. I mean, they have a LeBlanc and a Lissandra, and he only has a Hex Drinker at this point. So I would say that a better option would have just been to stick with your team. Because, I mean, we're a Lulu comp, right? Like, we're a protect the Lucian comp, essentially. So splitting off from the Lucian, splitting off the Lucian from the Lulu is maybe a bad idea. And had LeBlanc been a little bit better, she may have come and picked you off. Still, we're pressuring fine. We have a lot of tower damage. And see, if Lucian had been in the mid lane there, then as soon as Lissandra had showed, then Malphite could have teleported into the mid lane for a gank. Something that we also want to be doing is every time you see at the moment they're free to rotate between mid and bot, and that's because we don't have control over those areas. So when you're sieging like this in a 4-1 split, you want to be getting a lot of wards and a lot of pink wards, especially, down into their jungle between the two towers so that you have kind of rotation priority and vision on them whenever they're rotating. Late game Ezreal's come online, even if he built a bit weirdly. The Essence Reaver instead of the Blade of the Ruined King is not great in my opinion. He'd probably have killed you if he'd built properly. So yeah, try and stick together with the keep the Lucian and the Lulu together. It's probably in our advantage. That top wave would have bounced back eventually, and we could have just carried on winning. If we'd had a Banner of Command, then we could have just shoved it in that wave and carried on. At the very least, just create, or at the very most even, just create a slow push in that wave, and then rotate elsewhere on the map. And once that slow push arrives, then you can rotate over to that lane. From here on out, it's pretty much just we've got the Baron buff. We're a late game Lulu comp. We're going to roll over you now because you don't have any wave clear. Go away, Skype. What are you doing? And yeah, we just kind of win this game with kind of better team fighting, but you can't always rely on that to be the case. I mean, LeBlanc's just kind of running around now. She didn't know what to do particularly. She didn't know how to snowball her lead. She didn't make any good picks. She should have focused a lot more on the bot lane. Malphite ulti there was a bit of a risk. Didn't necessarily need to use it. And again, we're kind of just relying on team fighting here because our waves aren't pushing. In fact, the waves are actually pushing against us. So if we'd lost this team fight, which we could have if Lissandra hadn't messed up her ulti, fact of it being that she clawed and flashed straight onto the Lulu and got knocked up, which allowed us to kill her. But had that not happened, then the team fight could have gone a different way. Again, it's in our favour to just team fight, but we want the waves to be pushing into the enemy towers before we take fights like this. And then if you lose the team fight by some miracle, then it's still fine. And if you win it, then you definitely win. And you can take a lot more. Again, this is kind of just us rolling over them in the late game because we were mechanically a fair bit better than them. But that's not always going to be the case, and you can't rely on that. So to surmise, focus on towers. They're super important. A couple of building mistakes. Make sure waves are pushing into the enemy towers. Prioritize vision control and teleport advantage over everything else, more or less. And try to focus more on just tilting one player, essentially. The Lissandra was not punished enough for being completely out of the game, which she should have been. Okay, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something, and I will see you next time.